you. You know, this effort to save the post office has really brought out the best of Berkeley. It started about 2.5 years ago. It's brought together an incredible group. It's accomplished the amazing feat of actually having total unanimity on the city council. So that's really something for Berkeley. And it's also brought out a lot of volunteer effort from many quarters of the city. So one of those people that has stepped up is Tony Rossman. Tony Rossman is a lawyer and expert on the public trust, which is actually part of the argument that the National Post Office Collaborative put forward in the effort to halt the Stamford, Connecticut post office from being sold. So without further ado, I will also welcome up Tony Rossman.
Thank you. I want to say that for two reasons, it's a great honor that the city has asked me to represent us all if we need to go to court. The first, of course, is this building and what it has meant to the Berkeley community. It has united this community as I have never seen it united in my 40-some years of practice here in California. But it's also this particular building. My Italian family traces its origins to Florence. And when we were there 2 years ago, we lived for a few days on the very piazza where Brunelleschi's Foundling Hospital also sits, which is the building on which this building is patterned. This is an architectural gem of truly national significance. Now, we have some further bad news, unfortunately, that we got late yesterday afternoon that we have to share with you. The Postal Service sent a letter to the Advisory Council at 5:28 p.m. Washington time, which is consistent with their approach of keeping the public out of this. If I may respectfully disagree with our Congresswoman in one respect, I think this fight is not all about money, it is about power. Yes. It is about power against the people and power not to have to consider the historic value of this building includes its role in the community and its use as a post office. All right. And so it appears that litigation will have to be imminent unless something changes pretty dramatically in the next few days. And I can assure you that we are both prepared and preparing because we want this to be as good as it can be up until the moment that we actually have to do it. And in that respect, I think you all should know that as much as we treasure public interest litigation, it should always be our last resort, but they have pushed us to that point. And when everything else fails, we are going to hope that the federal courts will stand by us and by federal law. As you know, the Post Office has maintained this position, and I'd like to read just 2 sentences in their letter yesterday back to the Advisory Council. They kind of said the same thing that they said to the city earlier this week when they said, you have no right to see the contract for sale, you have no right to know the owner. I think the Berkeley Daily Planet got it right when they said post office to Berkeley, drop dead. Well, here is the post office to the Federal Council on Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, drop dead. The USPS is not willing to include the use of the property as a retail post office as an historic feature of the property. Second, the USPS is not willing to commit to operating a retail office with specific retail services in the property. We have the law on our side. We have an express federal regulation on our side. We have case law on our side. And we've got some tremendous allies on our side. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, the State Historic Preservation Officer. And these alliances have succeeded in the past, and we go into this fight with confidence that we will succeed at this time. And the other issue that we should focus on is the issue of alternatives, which is why, in addition to the preservation law that Congresswoman Lee cited, the National Environmental Policy Act that requires an environmental impact statement on major federal actions affecting the environment. The Post Office does not want to have public review and participation in defining alternatives to the sale of this property, with the covenant being held only by the Post Office itself. And among those alternatives, first of all, would be to restore the service that had historically been here. My two daughters write for the Berkeley Jacket. Their school is right across the street. We get those subscriptions 3 weeks late because they have to haul those down to San Pablo Avenue instead of walking across the street to the post office that has formed the historic fabric of this downtown for more than 100 years. We'd like to bring that service back.
Yeah. All right.
The other alternative, it's not our favorite alternative, but it still would be a good one. It would follow the example of what the post office has done in downtown Oakland. Do you know that if we were going to the Alameda Superior Court, which we would not, but if we were going to do that, our case would very likely be heard in the downtown Oakland post office. The post office leases the upstairs to Alameda County. Why can't the post office develop the back half of this property and lease that property to another worthy public use right here? The third option, if in fact they can establish that a sale can be done in acceptable means, would be to follow the example that they followed in Dallas and they followed at Arizona State, which is to preserve the building and then sell it to a developer who will enter into a 50-year lease for postal service at this location. Even not our first alternative, it's a lot better than what the post office would like to do now. So these are the reasons why I think we'll be successful. This morning, coming over here, I realized I should dig deep into my t-shirt drawer. I want to point out that with the National Trust, our firm, among other things, we were able to save the Orinda Theater. It still gives me a chill every time I come down Highway 24 and see that marquee. We stopped the 710 freeway from going through South Pasadena. It was before my time, but a friend of mine in New York gave me this t-shirt, which was the preservation campaign that really gave us the federal law. And so I want to say we're going to do the same thing they did in New York.
That was MAS, by the way. Yep, that was MAS.
This is in, yeah.
Yep, that was MAS.
Thank you very much, and Jess, since you're here, let me thank you and your colleagues for your unanimous, enthusiastic support for what you've asked us to do here.